whose opinion are you seeking? Who are the participants of your research? Who are the kind of people that you want to interview, you want to send your questionnaires to, you want to contact? Who is going to give you the data you need, pretty much, right? If you're a computer scientist, you're thinking, what open sources data are you going to use, or what software do you need, or what programming language do you need, or what data structure do you need to implement? So many other aspects. If you're a health practitioner or a practitioner, you think, okay, so which facilities will give you the right access to the people that you need to collect the information from or to collect the data from? And that normally is also very closely related to your ethics as well, right? Basically, can you ask the whole population, or do you need a sample from it? And you, of course, you need to think about how many people. Like, I have a research I'm conducting, and each of them, we're going to do like what, 2 hours per week. And if we're going to get 2 hours per week with about 23 people, you can imagine how much time you're going to spend on that research alone, and how many weeks are you going to spend on it. And even after you get the data, 2 hours worth of interviews is also going to generate a lot of research data. What time will you have to actually analyze the data as well? And it's quite interesting. I mean, at some point we talk about interviews and other things. It's quite interesting. People say their preferred research method is like interviews, because they believe that where they can actually they can sit with a person over coffee in a relaxed environment, or over tea in a relaxed environment. Let's say he had a company in the UK that he wants to contact about his research, and they agree to it. It's an opportunity to meet the CEO, for example. It's an opportunity to meet key people that normally you wouldn't meet, or some supervisors or some senior leaders, and just say, can we do it over coffee or over a meal? The person is relaxed, and you are more likely to also get more information, more relevant information as far as the topic is concerned. And also you receive, like, it feels less pressured kind of research, right? Okay, so basically, do you need to ask a sample, or do you even need a pilot study first? So if you need to start with a small number of people just to test the waters, or to know whether you really need rephrase your questions, then that's also something you may want to and also in terms of the samples, you can think of the type. Are you going with also choosing basically dimensional setting, going dimensionally, or even using specific demographics? I mean, we've already started using demographics as a sample approach, or were you going for a certain age range, for example? Are you going with convenience? Like, basically, yeah, I want to interview people, my close family, because those are the people that will actually that are willing to take part in the research. Or I say, I'm a college student, so maybe I'll interview, let's say, the head of the college, or some of the managers of the college, or the students or co-students, or maybe teachers or something. So are you going for it out of convenience? As long as you can actually justify, of course, even close family is also acceptable. But the key thing is that at the end, can you say that my data is reliable? Because it's all about the data that will give you the findings. I've done previous research, and I decided, okay, action research, of course, I have to use my own teaching, right? Because it's something that I have influence over. So I work with my students, and also I work with colleagues on my own action research, right? So are you going purposefully? Are you just purposefully going for a certain sample or snowball approach? You start, and then it goes bigger and bigger and bigger with some things. Right. So you can go a bit more into details in terms of what these approaches or these types are. And if you're talking about random, so basically you've got a whole population, and you randomly selecting from that population, and for something like a lottery, right? Lottery pick from hat, use of random numbers generator, just basically randomly assigning people, or like the way that I call people out from the list on the screen. Right. So for convenience, we've covered convenience into somewhat a bit more details. Let's go for purposive, which is the sampling that is based on the researcher's judgment. So you deciding that I need to get these people from that particular population. And also snowballing, you go initial informant, identify further information, or it's just, if you think about, you've got snowball once, you will it down, it goes bigger and bigger and bigger. So basically the idea is that you get more samples out of that. Piloting your questionnaire, you've got your population, and from that population, you can have a sample. Let's make that square. That's the people you are targeting, right? Or if you want, you can actually say, okay, fine, I've got a group of questions and everything. I want to find out whether my questionnaires actually work by selecting, if I intend to select, maybe have, let's say 50 samples, just random number. I can work with about 5 people to see how the questionnaire actually looks, or I can work with about 15 people to see how the questionnaire looks. And then I'll just maybe improve it a little bit. Then I'll go straight on for my data collection. Or you can say, I've got this particular sample that I am looking at, but I want to select a small set for my initial study. So they already meet the demographics that I'm looking at. And once I'm confident that I can go on, then I just go on to the bigger picture. So basically you want to send the draft of the work you've done. And sometimes in this case, it's more about the data collection process. So you want to send the work you've done to, well, your colleagues. We talked about that earlier when you mentioned about peer review aspect of it, or an expert in the field to have a look at the work. So in terms of your writing itself, we've done several pilots before it gets to this final stage and where the word bully and other stuff came in, right? Okay, or you can just give it to your supervisor. And as the actual data collection is concerned, you want to give it to, you want to do some initial analysis to see whether your questions are in the right place, or whether your plan for the interview is the right approach, or even whether you need to improve something to, and it's all about getting the best data that you can have for your research. And we've done something similar earlier where we look at his approach, what he intends to do. We had a bit of conversation about the pros and cons, then we have a bit of conversation about an alternative approach, then even a pilot will go a bit deeper to say, this is exactly how I plan to interview the person. These are the conditions I want to create in terms of environment. Environment is important. Or maybe I just want to send them questions remotely and they fill in their own times because these are busy people or something. Then we brainstorm through that to say, okay, how about you do it this way? How about you do it that way? Then why don't you go to the right, how don't you go there in person then, or just conduct the actual study to see what the initial phase actually give you. Pilot your questionnaire on a small scale. I know I chip in other types of other methodologies in here because we're not only focusing on questionnaire, but we're just talking about questionnaire right now. On a small number of people, and it's saying that ideally 10 sample out of 100 participants is quite okay. Now, this is what you want to look at it. Remember earlier we drew a bigger circle, which was our population. Then we had a smaller circle, which was our sample, to be the pilot you want to have. Ideally, you want to have this as your pilot. So your sample, the sample for the pilot should be quite similar to the actual sample you intend to use, or quite similar, have similar features as your population. So ideally from your population as well. But once you've done the work with this pilot, basically it doesn't make sense to do the actual data collection with them again. So you do not include your pilot in your actual data collection because of course they've already seen the question. They are likely to also have their own bias as far as the data collection is concerned. Do not include your participants again for the final sample or final data collection. If you have time, consider the use of pre-test interviews, debriefing, consider to use all the resources available to you. Something like in the focus group, we have talked about focus group in the last session when we had an interesting debate on whether mobile phones should be allowed in schools or not. So things like focus groups or conducting interviews, just basically use the tools available to you to run it as if you are doing the actual study in order to get a feel of how it works, right? So the info from that pilot will be used to improve your questions or your questionnaire or your interview or whatever you have planned. So basically will help improve it. Then you will feed it into your final study that you'll be doing with your sample. Right, okay. So we've got video that ideally I wish for you to watch as well. Hopefully the link still works.